world, you love to be able to have those conversations that are face-to-face. You can't get that on a screen when you're running a business. Looking after the people is your second part of your job, but it's actually the primary.
People talk about mergers, but it doesn't exist. Well, I've yet to see one anyway. What should people be thinking about when they're looking at a business to acquire?
If I don't make a change in something like this now, I'm not going to reap the benefits later on.
Most business owners I come across are more servant leaders and sacrifice themselves before all their stuff.
Every day's a different day, and that's what I love about it. I don't know where their sources are coming from at the Fair Work Agency. I don't know if it's lawyers. I don't know if it's ACAS conciliators that have moved across.
Laura, thanks for joining us on the Ownership Journey.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So you're founder of the Affable Partnership. You started the business about 20 years ago, didn't you?
Yeah. It's been some years. Yeah.
Do you want to just talk about what the business does now, and then we can go back to the kind of origin story?
Yeah, of course. So predominantly we put people and culture at the heart of business. We look after employers' workforce and support them with that extra arm, if you like, of additional needs and support where they have to have, further advice. And because let's face it, when you're running a business, looking after the people is your second part of your job, but it's actually the primary. So we deal with sort of M&A, we deal with legals, we deal with HR, we deal with leadership and development. So there's a big sort of array of those capabilities in the team. And we're probably more holistic, James, if I'm honest. We tend to be, rather than just, right, here's the law, we'll spout it at you. We tend to be saying to you, well, actually, this is what we can do to help support you and look after those workforce members. So things like nutrition, mental health and well-being, and all this sort of additional support that you can give, but actually doesn't have a financial cost or burden to it for employers. It's that, like I say, that additional support that we can provide them with.
Nice, because a lot of HR, there are a lot of fractional HR companies or people, and a lot of the focus naturally is on the compliance side, isn't it, rather than the holistic end-to-end piece. Would you say that's what
fair.
You see? Yeah,
it is, and I think a lot of the time with that, James, is a lot of people think, well, we only need it when we need it, whereas actually we become part of that integral part of their team, watching the business grow, taking on board new people. Actually, retention is really key. You don't want those individuals leaving. Individuals that are happy to stay, but also that they feel that they're valued. I think this is where culture is starting to change. And in business, you have leaders who aren't those ones that say, come on, follow me. You actually become part of that integral team with your workforce. So.
Yeah. And so we'll come back to some of the topics, particularly M&A. I think probably a lot of our viewers are more M&A focused, but going back to like when you set up by yourself, what had you done previously, and what was the thought process of starting your own business, and how did that manifest? Okay,
so when I first started, way back, probably I was working with law firms in their employment teams. As part of that employment department, and we'd help support on a legal perspective those employers that needed that additional legal compliance side, James, that you were referring to earlier. And then I came away from that because ultimately there were big changes going on in the finance world, in the banking world, in the accounts world, and that all came to a big different change in that environment those years back. And when I came away, I just remember thinking, I want to do something different. I want to make a difference. I want to make something that is more felt like it was more valuable. And I started at my dining table, and I remember my daughter pushing around her colouring pens and sort of saying, Mum, can I pinch your pens to do it? But before that, I went over to another law firm that was across the water and helped set their team up. And I remember thinking, what am I doing? Why do I need to do this? Actually, a client at that point said to me, why do you need to go somewhere else? Because in law, there's a lot of people, this lawyer knows that lawyer and that lawyer knows the other. And it became quite well known in that environment who is who. And I just thought, I don't need to do this anymore. I can actually do this on my own. So that's where I started. And I remember then, way back, there was lots of space in getting myself ready, professional indemnity, all those requirements that you've got to make sure that you're all compliant yourself. So there was a lot of those plates I probably had to spin when I first came away, thinking, oh my gosh, I've got to do my accounts. Oh my gosh, I've got to do this. I've got to do that. I've got to do the other. Whereas before that had all been taken care of for me. And it was working out what that value was to business owners and how we could add that support. And it was lovely because a lot of clients came looking for me. A lot of clients were approaching me and saying, look, we want you to do this. And I'm going, wait, just let me get myself sorted and then we'll go forward. And that's how the journey sort of started. And I think we got to COVID and we were predominantly in the hospitality sector. Things were going really well, but obviously and really sadly for that sector, it was a real struggle for them. So you were starting to see businesses not literally falling off a cliff edge, but it was really tough. And I got to a point where I was just like, as much as I'd love to be able to help you, I can't, there needs to be a revenue in the business that's got to make this financially work for us. So we changed. It was a big word back then called the word pivot, I think, if I remember rightly. Everybody loved that as a buzzword, didn't they? So we readjusted, we changed the model. We looked at what value was really important to employers. And it was their workforce, but it wasn't just the legal side. It was the other additional support that we've now come to know and love and provide to our clients, really.
Amazing. And how, because there's a number of you in the Affable partnership now, isn't there? So what's the size of the
Yes,
team,
there's about 8 of us, 9 of us, about to embark probably on a 10th. We're just sort of going through that process with them at the moment. And they are all in the team doing what they really enjoy. We've got a menopause trainer who's just signed up a deal with ITV, which is really exciting. We've got a nutritionist who's working in some of the big highbrow businesses that we work with in London. We've got mental health and wellbeing. We've got a commercial solicitor that works really well with us, who's doing quite a lot of mergers and acquisitions. There's a tender writer. Yeah, the growth of that is really what's really important. But it's being able to feel like when clients come to you, Laura, I've got this issue, who do you know or who can you help me with or put me in touch with that I can speak to? And I think that's the most valuable thing that you can help them provide. And you become that sort of confidant is probably the right word.
Yeah.
They pick up the phone and go,
business coach.
Yeah, you sort of, and I never at that point had thought of it as like that. I think because I'm in business myself, I get it. There's lots of things out there that you find a little bit challenging or in business that you have to get through yourselves. But realistically, it's being able to provide that support when they need it.
Yeah. Each of the team members has specialties, but presumably they must also do generalist HR as well.
Yeah.
As that.
And one of them is a real testament for us as a client. He was a client. He came across their business model changed. And he does say to me, my gosh, that was the longest 18-month training or interview you'd given me. And I was like, I like to see what I'm try before I buy and everything. So yeah, he came and joined us in January this year, which was really exciting. So it gives me that opportunity to see the sort of talent that's out there and enables me to embrace the right team members, if you like. So yeah, as you say, James, they do a lot of the generalist work. They also do a lot of learning and development training as well. So
how did you decide when you started it, when to bring that first person on? Like how did you, because there must have been a sort of build up and did you hire before you had the demand or when there was too much work for you to do? Or how did you?
Do you know, that's a really good question. No one's ever asked me that. And I think not till you've asked me that, I suddenly realised that I went all in at a point that was really quite scary. I remember that quite vividly and going, do you know what? If I don't make a change in something like this now, I'm not going to reap the benefits later on. And it was the best move that I did. It was rather than a lot of businesses who go, oh, budget's really tight, can't do this, can't do that. It's really worrying.
Which I think most businesses, most SMEs are probably in that camp, aren't they? Yeah.
They do, absolutely. Yeah. And it was very much like, no, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to go all in and I'm going to go all in and I'm going to make it work. So
you hired someone early?
Yeah. That was the best move for me, best move, because what it did is allowed me to step away from a lot of that. I wouldn't say it's mundane because that's probably not fair, but there was a lot of that
detail.
Noise and detail and all the things that I didn't need to be buried in that actually sort of took me away from what I was focusing on. So, and what that enabled me to do, James, was help grow. It helped us grow. It helped us become more effective. We've managed to, we've streamlined. We've used a lot of tools that make the business more efficient, you know, and we are our best year yet. So, you know, that's what's really exciting about it for me. And that's what makes me get it. Do you know, somebody said to me the other day, and I said, I feel like you look on a Sunday night and you think, yeah, what's happening this week? I'm really excited. And I never, probably in my old commercial corporate days, felt like that. It was never somewhere that I felt like I could get out of bed for. Whereas actually, yeah, every day is a different day. And that's what I love about it.
Nice. Now you work across a whole range of sectors, so service, manufacturing.
Yeah.
The whole
trade.
suite.
Yeah.
How many clients would you say you've got on board at the moment?
Wow. We must be talking about between 40 and 50 that are on a regular basis. And then that doesn't include the ones that come back every 5, 10. Our recent one was 15 years ago, and he came back recently and was like, really need you to do this for me. So, yeah, there's a lot of retained work, but that's not through pushing it. It's purely a case of that the clients say, do you know what, we want to come back to you. It's sort of voluntary. And I think circa, I mean, our longest standing client is sort of 10 years now.
Wow.
But that's, again, voluntary because of the relationship that we've built.
So you mentioned acquisitions, M&A. I feel like I'm at some point I'm going to get rid of the M because have you ever come across a merger? Because it's either one side or the other. It
is.
Yeah.
You're so right. So we're like, why do we
people talk about mergers, but it doesn't exist. I've yet to see one anyway. What should acquirers be thinking about when they're looking at the business? Because presumably you see what I've seen, which is the focus is predominantly on numbers. So what should people be thinking about when they're looking at a business to acquire?
Yeah. I think, ultimately it's about not necessarily just the financial side, like we were just saying. It's about the people. It's about what is that going to look like moving forward? Are you looking at succession planning? Are you looking at leadership? Who's the key people that are in the business that you first, like you say, that acquisition, the first 90 days, you should be coming up with a really good 90-day plan. And that's something we help clients provide. That part is critical. We've had one just recently who didn't get our advice initially and bought the business. And I'm chuckling because they came to us afterwards, opened the door when they first had the first day of, hi, I'm the new owner and nice to see you. And the employees went, we were entitled to a share of this business if it was bought, and we were entitled to have first dibs on the business if it was bought. So the employer was suddenly going, oh my gosh, I didn't actually check those T's and C's. I thought it was just going to be fine. Everybody, the figures looked right and everyone was okay. I hadn't really actually met any of them before, because there's always this nervousness when there is an acquisition, and I get it. I totally get it. But it's really important for that workforce. And I did a talk a while back where we said, there is no reason why employees can't just get up and walk out. There's nothing to stop them from doing that. And I think there is a misconception that the people necessarily aren't part of the key reason for why a business is important to acquire. Yes, I get that there's PEs out there that just want to buy the name, the brand and retain, and, the workforce doesn't matter. But I think for loyalty and that to help that business grow and develop and move forward in a positive way, it's about getting that team on board, but also dealing with things early rather than saying, oh, okay, so we've done this now. Now we need to look at this, that, and the other, but we'll wait for a good few years before we touch anything. Well, business doesn't work like that, does it? You want to move things on. It's so much more fast-paced, particularly in the private sector. So you sit there and you go, but you can't sit and wait. And actually, these deals can have conversations very early on in the acquisition. You can say, well, those figures, those individuals that isn't going to work. We need to come to some agreement. What do we look at in terms of those levers? Are we going to have a conversation where we put something in escrow, or we look at a settlement, or we make people redundant? So I think you have to look at that bigger picture to get you into the position you want it to be in when you've acquired. So my view is earlier on, before you've signed along the dotted line, is really where you need to have those conversations.
Yeah. So a couple of following questions then. What are practical tips that potential buyers can do during the DD phase or looking into a business? And maybe coupled with that, like what are some tools that you can use, like I guess reviewing contracts, or is it interviewing the next layer, understanding what their ambition is? Like what's the practical tips that people can do?
Yeah. So I think, the first thing is if you can get hold of the information before.
Yeah.
Before the T's and C's.
Anything to do with shareholding.
Yeah, totally. What is the relationship with the directors? Is there a director service level agreement? Where does that put that position? Is it an MD that you're going to retain? Is it somebody that you need to have a discussion with about moving on? What does that look like? Is that a financial cost to you as an early stage, or is it an exit plan that over 12 or 24 months there's part of that term that they stay with you?
Mm-hmm.
That always causes a little bit of issue because clearly some businesses will already have those individuals that they want to put in place. But contracts, absolutely. Also about making sure who those leaders are and getting them on board very early on. So having those conversations with those key players in the business is really critical. Other top tips are getting to know the current owners. Does it match the culture that you want in the business? Is it similar? What you tend to find with a lot of business owners who are particularly family owned is that they want it to be the same as it was when they owned it, only just passing it over. And I think sometimes there is always that assurance that that's going to happen, but then it completely changes. And sometimes you find with employees, they will not go back to the old employer, but just generally have a conversation in passing that things aren't quite the way that they were laid out. And I think it's about, if you're going to have those businesses, make sure that they are in line with your values. I've got a really lovely PE client that I work with who models that each time. They've acquired, they're on their sixth business now. And through our help, we've raised them to 25 million with, I think it's 180 staff.
25 million revenue.
Yeah. Which is a really good in 2 years. That's a huge success story, but that's because they got the model right when they first started working with
What industry are they in?
Manufacturing.
Okay.
Yeah, which is really exciting for them.
Sometimes find that the owner obviously has a much bigger role than they think they do. And when they step up a little bit, there's more space for people below them to grow into those roles.
Absolutely.
Do you find that quite a lot where it's actually a bit of a release? And I find sometimes what we're doing is managing that. Okay, the owner's kind of letting control and the other people are stepping up, and no, it's okay. You can take responsibility now. You can step up. Do you see that quite a lot?
Absolutely. I think there's an element of fear of reprisal when the old owner's there, because ultimately they've been used to doing things that way, and there wasn't really that opportunity to grow, develop, exceed expectation, like you were just saying. So the current owner, what you tend to find is they become quite exhausted. They come deflated. They no longer have the same passion.
This is the owner.
Yeah, this is the owner. They no longer have that passion. And that then infiltrates into the team, because what we found is that once the workforce is there with the right fit, they almost come outside of their shells and say, this is going to be the best thing that's ever happened to this company, because, we can do this and we've got this idea. And actually it's fresh ideas that really help grow and support those teams coming through, because they then go, we were always told that we couldn't do that. Well, no, this is great. This is what we want. We want to do this. We want to help this evolve. And I think that's where those relationships are really, really, really valuable.
So maybe thinking about the owner's position from a succession planning. Obviously PLCs are different, but in small private businesses, I generally find there's very little thought that goes into succession planning. Is that fair? Is that
Definitely.
what you've seen as well?
Yep.
So looking at it from a seller's perspective or a business owner's perspective who's got a business they're running, maybe they're thinking of selling in the future, maybe they're not. What should they be thinking about to make it maybe less dependent on them and get it to a point where succession planning is on the agenda?
So I think, realistically, it's not 5 days before the sale
No.
when you sign off the dotted line.
Yeah.
That does happen.
Yeah.
Suddenly they go, oh, I need to think about this. And that's really going to be important. My view is that needs to be a lot earlier on. You need to have those.
A year, 2 years.
Yeah. 2, possibly 3, because you need to know what that looks like and setting that out very early on. Because to get to the team to that level takes so much weight off of that situation when it goes through the sale, because ultimately the new owners are going to sit there and go, this is great, this is all taken care of. You've actually got everything set up, ready to go. So we work with a platform that provides that for employers and founders.
What's that?
It's called the Founders Exit. And it's a platform that says
is
where
that
you're
software or
software. We've partnered with the guys that provide that, and it's a fantastic bit of software, and it basically says, look, where your journey is, where you're ready. Are you ready? Are you not? What you're failing in, what you're improving in, where you should go. And it's a really great journey to steer sellers to say, this is what you need to do, and these are the parts that are taking priority. So we're excited to be part of that journey.
It's almost saying, where are you now as a founder, and this is where you need to be in terms of different criteria.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So you touched on maybe just think about the business owner for a minute. Like you said, they can lose their. How do you see business owners when they're high performing and maintaining a high performance for a long time? What do they typically do? And on the counterbalance, what owners who lose their passion and lose their energy, what do they do? So you mentioned some of the things around nutrition, well-being. Like, what are the tips you've got for business owners
for looking after their workforce?
Yeah, well,
for
we'll come to that in a minute.
Owners.
I'm just talking about business owners. What do business owners do? I'm looking for tips for myself.
Yeah. So, health is most important.
Yeah.
It's the reality of taking time out for yourself. And like you say, when you're fast paced, you are going at 20,000 miles an hour. So you need to take that time out for yourself to help you refocus and say, look, what is this journey? I think somebody mentioned it to me some time ago. What is your why? Why do you do what you do? What is the reason? What is your end game? What do you ultimately want to achieve? And work back from that so that you can then say, right, this is my end, but this is how I work back from it. I wouldn't say slow down, because that's how we are as personalities. Entrepreneurs are in that environment where they go, right, I'm going with that. Now I'm going to do this. Now I'm going to do that. And I think reality is to make sure that you keep your focus, but keep your lane, because there's a lot of noise out there. There's an awful lot of noise, and you can easily become, I'm going to go off down this route. I'm going to go down that route. I'm going to try that.
Staying focused.
Yeah, stay focused. But also, as SMEs you were mentioning, James, we're in a really good position. And I think this is why SMEs is so important, is because we can make those changes if we want to. You can turn around and you go, do you know what? We're not doing that. We're going to stop that right now, and we're going to move to this. Whereas the big, like you were just saying, the big PLCs, it's a big engine, isn't it? Have to turn that. It's like a big, pardon the pun, but the Titanic, it's like quick to turn out from the iceberg. You've got to, make sure you've given yourselves enough time to do that. And I think that's where we're really in a really strong position. Yeah. Slick, nimble, efficient, and make that work. But health is a really critical one, and giving yourself the time out, because we put so much pressure on ourselves where you suddenly go, I'm just going to do that, and I'll just finish that off, and I'll just in a minute I'll be there, and I'll do this, and we're really I remember starting the business and thinking, gosh, working time regulations, that probably didn't apply to me when I first started. 48-hour working week, really? Not quite what I'd envisaged, but it's keeping that fire stoked, isn't it? And giving that energy to the team that is behind you, to give them the support and the enthusiasm that they need as well. But
because there's different types of leadership. Most business owners I come across are more servant leaders and sacrifice themselves before all their stuff. That's what I find anyway. So
you put the rest of the team first.
It's that there's someone There's another HR director I follow who talks about business owners need to be properly selfish, in order for them to perform in front of everyone else, which is quite interesting thought. Maybe thinking about the staff then, like what are some practical things that, because have you seen the workforce expectations from employers change and evolve over the 20 years you've set up the practice?
Oh, massively. I think tech has been a huge player in that because, from businesses having to do a lot of stuff that was manual, that was a complete headache. And I mean, us using the sort of platforms that we use for our clients with holiday and sick pay, these are things that people used to, provide on a spreadsheet, and they'd have to put them manually in, and to come away from that to have a digital platform that does it automatically for you, which is, again, something that our clients are really positive about. It gives them their time back, because we were talking about time poor and actually being mentioned earlier about being selfish. It's making sure that you manage that time more efficiently, and the things that you don't need to be doing, you delegate and outsource and look at those options. I think I said to you earlier, one of the things that we talk about is in our world, employment, HR, that sort of environment isn't potentially a business owner's level of expertise unless you are an HR person yourself. So I think delegate earlier on. You were talking about obviously the staff and making sure that, what can you give to those employees that is valuable. And I think it's about having those conversations that one size doesn't fit all. It's not here's a quick fix and this is what we need to do. It's about sitting down with your teams and saying, look, what can we do to help make things be more flexible, more improvement? And I think, flexible working has been another thing that has been coming through. We've been waiting for it for years. But I think it has a real positive outcome for a lot of, not all employers, because I get that. There's a lot of employers like that just wouldn't work with the flexible working.
Construction.
Yeah, exactly. So it's looking at those needs to suit those, but also who is going to be that employee that you want to have on board. So yeah.
Other things that you've found work particularly well. So, healthcare, gym memberships, discounts. Like what's the
So we've
discounts that have popped up on there?
Yeah, we've helped a lot of our clients implement products. There's one called Perk Box. There's another one called Healthbox HR. There's a lot of platforms out there. Do your research, I would say, first before to make sure that it works for you. And what could be beneficial for one employee may not be, as like you're mentioning, obviously gym membership. Great for one, may not be for one that actually doesn't enjoy that but might want to be a member of, I don't know, Netflix or Amazon or something. It's how that sort of balance works right for you.
Yeah, it's the balance of, you're right, I think, to be consultative, and that's my natural approach, and I think business owners generally as well, but it's at the same time, people like to think that they're getting things of even value. So you suddenly get, so-and-so got a,
got a Rolex watch this year.
Rolex watch, or do you know what I mean? So you need to,
and I didn't get a holiday.
Yeah. So how you do that within the confines of everyone feeling that it's been fair. That's the.
So another option that's an opportunity. One of our clients is decided that Friday afternoon they don't want their workforce to work. They've said, afternoon everybody can be off on this particular day. You'll still get paid.
Yeah.
Additional holiday is always a really good one, because a lot of employees will always find that there is not enough holiday that they're entitled to in their workplace. That's a really good and tax efficient way of supporting those employees.
Yeah.
The other options that you can look at, that we were talking this recently with clients of ours, duvet days. So to avoid a lot of sick absence, what does that look like? What's the stats on your team? And actually,
what's duvet day?
So duvet day is basically you ring up and say, look, I'm just not coming in today, and I just want to stay at home. Can I have a duvet day? So they're looking at doing 2 to 4 duvet days a year, so that employee has the option, rather than going, I'm not very well.
Okay.
And then go through this whole rigmarole of disciplinary and capability issues and, having your cards marked to actually saying, do you know what? I'm having a really tough day. I don't really want to come in today. That's fine. I'm going to take a duvet day.
Yeah.
So it's Americanism that's come into the UK.
Yeah.
But there's all sorts of different ways that you can get get your teams involved. There's lots of charity events out there that you can, volunteer for, get those teams together and say, sort of on the coast, and you sort of say, well, beach cleaning for an afternoon or going and helping at the local hospital and one of the local charities or something that helps sort of reform you. That not so much team building sort of events. There was a lot of that probably about 4 or 5 years ago. But you tend to find that a lot of people feel that they want to do something with purpose. So you find that candidates that are now coming in are more of a generation that go, it's not just about the money. It's about what you as an employer do that's meaningful to our community or our, what do we stand for to help things in a real positive that doesn't have a money value.
Have you come across this concept of like key person of influence? I don't know, do you know Daniel Priestley?
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, this is something we've done this to varying levels. Obviously, this is partly key person of influence, but it's have you found that helping business owners in recruitment and retention as well? Because my wife she does a lot for women in engineering and construction, and just going to schools and explaining what is engineering, what is construction. But there have been some people that join the business because I saw you do that, and therefore I was interested to join.
Yeah.
So I think that's another tip for employers is be better.
Absolutely.
Known. Don't be the best kept secret.
No, we were doing some training for a construction client for menopause, and it was something that was very much initially
taboo.
Why do we need to do that? We're in construction, how does that impact our rest of our team? But the value has shot their reputation sort of that high, really, because of what they've implemented. And you're right, it's about construction is one because you mentioned about engineering, but it's one of those areas that a lot of women want to be more recognised in. And I think it's key person of influence. If you can be those people that environment, that's what's really important. But I think it's about getting that level right, making sure that you're all sailing in the same direction, and that's what makes it really important.
Purpose, mission, values, all that.
That's right. Yeah. Back to the culture.
When you see I want to get on to like legislation, because that's obviously been a hot topic the last 6 months of the year. I'm sure you've had lots of questions from clients on this. But in just sticking on like team, and where do you sit in terms of there was obviously a big shift in COVID towards flexible working, and then there's been some employers that said no, everyone back to the office. I think most have probably kept a sort of middle ground of flexibility. But what's your view on
on that side of things,
flexibility and work from home, work from the office? And
I think you have to look at it on a case by case basis. You can't say this sector is the sector, so that's going to have all the flexibility it needs. You have to look at it from a business as a whole, as how it works for you as an employer. And it's the middle ground is then the crossover between communicating on Teams to someone that's never at the office ever. I mean, we had a case recently where for 8 years, it must be 8 years now, the individual was almost reluctant to come back to the workplace because they had been so used to being at home. They had evolved their life around working at home, but actually the employers were saying, do you know what, we really need you back, if not some of the time back in the office. And we had a huge level of resistance. So we had to go through this big consultation process to encourage those individuals to come back to work, to be involved, because I don't think you can replace that when you have a team. It's really hard.
So much harder. I've found is that I think people appreciate flexibility, and definitely when it's coupled with if you're doing a site survey, in a building,
yes,
you don't have to travel all the way to come into the office just for the sake of it. Go home after that. Yeah. But I think from a collaboration perspective, it's so much more efficient in person.
It is. Absolutely. Human face, this is part of what we do. It's human face of business, isn't it? Yes, there's tech out there, there's AI out there, but you can't beat that relationship building. There's a lot of our clients, when they take on board their new starters, they often say to the new starters, we want you in the work environment for at least 6 months.
Right, full time.
To get you used to, being in that environment, because COVID had a lot to answer for individuals not having that face-to-face or that human contact, which I think still so important these days.
And from a business perspective, I've seen a few top entrepreneurs talk about this, and you see this in some of the events. Like there's an event tonight, which I think gets kind of booked out mostly. Yeah. People crave human,
they do,
live experiences, don't they?
Yeah, because you can't beat that exposure. I mean, again, in our environment and our world, you love to be able to have those conversations that are face to face. I'm quite, my hands and face and emotion is quite visible, and I think you can't get that on a screen, and we know that from cases where we had HR directors for P&O lining their staff up on Teams and sacking them all. So you sit there and you go, just so it's just not
shocking.
It's not the environment that you want to be in.
When you look at high performing teams versus what can business owners do from without costing lots of money? Like what are the high performing teams that you see? What do they look like?
Okay.
And what do they do to maintain that sort of high performance? Is it having that combined vision, or what do you see as high performing teams doing?
Yeah. So I think, obviously you're all on the same page, that's the first thing that's really important, and also knowing what the company vision is. What is a lot of business owners are always quite nervous or feel that they can't divulge information about their business because it's confidential or because there's certain things that we don't want to share. But actually, openness is really key because you get more out of your high performers because they're engaged. So you've got the very first thing is getting them engaged and on board, and going in this. We were talking about the ship earlier, but all going in the same direction. That I think is really relevant. Training is another, because that whilst they might be amazing at that particular job or that particular area, you can't expect them to know absolutely everything. Well, particularly we were talking about law. There is a process that tribunals, even in my area, that would expect high performers to know, which is part of equality and discrimination and how to deal with dismissals and how to deal with grievances. So there's that part of the people side, if you like. But also, one of the other things that we have is a personality profile that we provide to employers, so that it helps them with their team of high performers. I don't know if you've ever done it in your past, James, at all.
Corporate.
Yeah. So there's a lot to be said.
ENFP and stuff. Yeah,
that's right. There's a lot to be said for that, because it helps you shape that team into such a good way, and then it highlights the areas that you need additional parts to make better, or do we need someone else who is a high performer who doesn't have that area of expertise, but actually now that we've done this profiling, we do need someone in that area to do that. So
there's the 16 personalities. There's the color wheel.
Yes.
Is there a different one that you use? Or
we use DISC.
Use DISC.
DISC. Yeah.
DISC.
And we've got that on our platform that I can provide and give you the details if you want them.
Okay, I can put a link in.
It's great. It's a great just the initial part on the blog, it just literally tells you those. You could almost put yourself into one of those boxes where you go, actually, I'm one of those, or quite nicely, I'm all four.
Yeah. The other one to add into the mix on the first one is communication. Like some of the things I see happening is relatively simple communications things.
Yeah, it's a big thing. You're absolutely right. It was one of my other things that I was going to say. Keeping that door open, the open door policy, communication is really key. Making sure that everybody is not communicating the same way, but understands what's going on. Because if they don't, then they can't lead their teams in the same direction. That's what makes it a real challenge. But it's I would say pretty much in most cases, that we deal with when they come to a complaint or an issue with an employee when you're mediating is to do with they don't talk to me properly. They don't have that conversation. It isn't back to the people. That's why that part is so important, is to provide that openness.
Just thinking about like management structures, there's a trend more recently around flat structures, but then you can't have like 100 people reporting to one person. So there's like spans of seven, 8. So just talk about like what does best practice suggest? It's probably situational dependent, but how do you see the business of 180 people? How many people can a manager manage, and what does the hierarchy look like so that it doesn't become cumbersome and you end up with middle managers who are just managing and not doing? Like, what's that balance?
I think it's about having the idea from I say the top down, because that's probably not fair, but from the founder. You were talking earlier about acquisitions and getting that right early on. This part is quite key, because what you find is they have flattened before they've bought the business. So it's getting that place in place very early on, where they're having those conversations of saying, right, we don't want to be involved in all the weeds. We don't want to be, why should the MD be dealing with these particular issues in that team over there when those managers are the ones that should be doing it? You were saying about the 180 staff. We've got a tier-leveled platform that works really effectively for those teams of individuals that they can go to. And I don't just mean managers. I mean, there's supervisors, there's people that are trained, and some of the HR team that helps develop that as well. So it's a bit like where you have the cogs in a system where they're actually all working together. And I think that's what's really important. You need to make sure what that looks like from those individuals. So we had to restructure one of the businesses that we helped a client on board with, because it just wasn't effective. We had issues like you mentioned earlier, James, of managers saying, well, that's great, but I've never had to manage people in my life, and I wouldn't know how to either. So you sit there and go, right, okay, well, this is a task that we need to make things better and improve it. But I think, you do need to have that tiered level, because employees otherwise get confused with who they need to speak to. And if it's not made clear to them, they then end up completely either isolated or feeling that they're not valued.
Is there an optimum then? 7, 15?
Yeah, probably. I'd say between 7 and 10.
7 and 10.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. So in that 180 example, you'd have what, 18 managers?
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other sort of, maybe we'll come back to the transition piece, but so the Employee Rights Bill, have I said it correctly?
Rights Act 2025.
Act.
No, that's all right.
Has come out.
Yeah. The joys.
Yeah. So maybe not going through every single detail, but it's what are the key things that employers should think about when they're looking at this new legislation coming in? Okay.
So when they introduced it, it wasn't just one area. They've decided that they are going to filter things gradually. Probably already that from April, statutory sick pay from day one came in. They're looking at sexual harassment against third parties. That's coming in October. Third parties. Yeah. So we've got a sexual harassment risk assessment that we provide to our clients that helps them analyse where their risks or levels of exposure are in their business to sexual harassment or inappropriate behaviour. What it enables them to do is to go through that and say, actually, these are our pain points, these are our risk areas, these are the points that we need to protect. The third party issue has come into force a lot because of public interest. We've heard a lot on in the newspapers, on television about individuals that have been inappropriate, but actually there's no protection for the employees. So that's why a lot of that has been coming into force. And it's about what those measures look like for employers and making sure that they're dealing with things in a fair and right way. The other areas is trade union recognition. The new government, been around for a little while now, and the government want that in contracts to justify that employees are entitled to trade union recognition. So we help streamline clients' contracts and review them to make sure that they're compliant. The other part is going to be unfair dismissal. Yeah, from the 1st of January. Really should start looking at that now before 1st of July, because a lot of that will impinge on probation periods. So it's important for employers to start getting that sorted out. And we've got a process in place now that helps employers deal with their mini process. I call it a mini process, but a mini exit if individuals aren't going to work out. So we've always had this 2-year rule now where if a relationship is just not going to happen, you can have a conversation that's what's called a short service dismissal. Whereas in the future, those elements will need to be measured much quicker and much earlier on. So I'd like to say that everybody finds the right candidate from day one, but that's never the case.
Sometimes people change.
That's right. That's right. It depends on where they are in their journey. But the reality is a very shorter space of time to deal with those issues. I mean, my view is I don't think, 6 months is sufficient. I think you need longer for finding out whether that's going to work. Some people say, well, actually, no, 3 months is fine. And we either know the honeymoon period's over. And
3 months is really hard. I think 6 months probably doable, but
you've got no time. From next year. That will be a case of 6 months for unfair dismissal. And of course, the bit that they're missing is the issue when someone goes on maternity leave. So they're on maternity leave now will fall into the new category of unfair dismissal rights from next year when they come back. So there's a lot of grey
So someone
areas.
joins and then goes on maternity leave, is that what you're saying? And then they would pass the 6 months without effectively being, without seeing whether it works from both sides during that 6 month period. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. We've got a new thing called the Fair Work Agency. The Fair Work Agency, who are currently dealing with issues relating to wages. They are there as the sort of mediator that is being allocated to deal with employers and employees. I haven't seen a lot of that being used just yet. I think the whole view on the work agency is to help prevent discrimination claims and to be that first port of call if things go wrong. So that's all come into play now.
Does that work in conjunction with ACAS?
Well, that's interesting, James, that you should say that, because we're not clear where that direction is going to lead with that, because obviously a lot of the conciliators that work for ACAS, you have to be at least 5 years qualified to deal with a discrimination claim. I don't know where their sources are coming from at the Fair Work Agency. I don't know if it's lawyers. I don't know if it's ACAS conciliators that have moved across. So, I mean, ACAS will always be there. It's always been a really valuable tool. But my concern is they are loading the courts up with so much litigation that I think that we will just be bogged so far down in cases. We're already listing cases 2 years, 2 years already. And this is before this has come in next year. So, you find it quite frustrating that the infrastructure hasn't been probably more thought about than it should. And of course, the burden falls on the employers, which hugely frustrates employers, because you sit there and you go, I've got all of this that I'm trying to bring in revenue, and now I've got all these issues that I need to consider. So we totally get it. We totally understand the frustrations.
So an area I wanted to, is there anything else in terms of legislation that you think is important to sort of cover in changes? So, I mean, maybe you were saying if it's not worked out, I think I just listened to one of your other pieces, but redundancy, capability, conduct, performance, and then other substantial reasons.
That's 5 fair reasons for dismissal.
Five reasons for dismissal. Because it might be that you want to just change the role slightly. So what would that look like if you wanted to have a conversation
now
with it?
Or next year?
Let's say next year.
Okay, so if you're going to change the role slightly, there definitely needs to be that communication that we talked about earlier, and keeping a note of that conversation and how long you are putting that in for, and are you going to review it and what that looks like? Are you going to be saying, do you know what, we'll change the roles slightly because of the job spec is slightly different. You need to get that individual agreeing to those new terms and how long you're going to carry that on. So I wouldn't say paper trail is critical, but it will be really important to show that you've acted fairly.
It's quite a lot of it seems like quite a lot of additional burden for small businesses, but I guess that's where
We come in.
You come into this. You come into this picture.
That's right.
When a small business is looking at, there's been a lot of discussion, and I try to avoid now like absolutisms of AI is going to replace jobs, or we're going to outsource everything to South Africa or India, or I just think it's not very nuanced. But when when a small business or a business is thinking about recruiting someone, are there things where you would before, so you've got kind of use agency or kind of fractional services, or use outsourced services overseas, or recruit someone? How should employers be thinking about these different tools? Because there's some people saying outsource everything or get AI to do everything, but that's not always the answer. So how do you think about this, and how do business owners that you work with think about it?
Okay. So I guess what you've got to remember is, with tech as much as it is, it's only as good as the person that's putting in the input and putting the information in it.
Yep.
And that's run by a human. So I think, yes, it's lovely to be able to say that in a ideal world, everyone can rely on everything that's AI, but the idea of that is an ideal, but it doesn't necessarily exist. I mean,
No.
I would say to clients, if you want to go and do some research, that's fine, but check it over, because inevitably there's going to be mistakes in it. And I wouldn't definitely rely on that source of information. But I think in terms of outsourcing, it has its benefits too, depending on the source depending on the sector that it's within. I don't think you can be having the personal touch, which is what we talked about. The human face of business is that you are all in a room and you are all getting to know one another, and that's how the work increases, productivity increases, loyalty is
I still think that's the optimal.
Yeah. I don't think you can be having those people in that room.
You've got a high performing team in a physical room with the same mission and vision and so on.
You can't beat it. You can't beat it. We wouldn't go to do sort of a lot of these corporate events that we do if we didn't think that there was people, like we were talking about earlier, James. We're going to events that there's other human beings there. That's what we're part of. We're part of that. There's very limited number of individuals out there that like to just be in solitary confinement on their own every day, all day. So I think, there's a lot to answer for. There is a lot to think about, but get your plan in place. And again, like we said with businesses, you can try it for a while. If it doesn't work, you can change it.
When you employ someone.
When you employ somebody, but also if you decide that you're going to go, you mentioned earlier about outsourcing and other resources that you could perhaps consider. It's not a solution. I think you can't be having a team that is on your side. That's
because you're a team of 8. Are they physically in the same location? Yeah,
no, not all of them. But I think we have that connection where we are doing all those things together to make things work. And we're all adults. There's an element of trust where you go, do you know what? You can do that. You don't have to clock watch. I don't do that with my team anymore. I've moved away from that environment of going, you have to be tied to your desk at 9 o'clock from 9 a.m. and you finish at 5. Doesn't work for me. We're in a team where I want them to flourish. I want them to grow. I want them to enjoy the ride, which their feedback is always important, and that's what they tell me they love about it.
And so thinking about sort of leadership development, and this, was it Michael Gerber who talks about like technician, manager, entrepreneur, and I find a lot of business, you must come across a lot of business owners who started because they were technically really good at something and did a good job for clients, and then built out a team, and then they're in a leadership position. So what should the cadence be for leading a team? I'm going to give leading examples, but there's the old school, like every year you give a performance review, where I think the latest research is little and often. So like what should leaders be thinking about when they're coaching a team on an ongoing sort of cadence basis?
Yeah, I mean, communication's key, obviously, keeping your team on board and focused and having those regular, I would say, informal meetings to keep engagement is really important. Performance reviews will help to make sure that they're in the right place, doing the right job, and achieving what they want to achieve, but actually helping them with additional training and support. Probably looking at that every quarter. They used to look at it, if you're doing it annually, it's just sort of giving it lip service, but more and more it's being an increased focus on those teams to help them develop and get better knowledge, if you like, which is what's really important. But I think it's engagement, and we mentioned this earlier, didn't we? Engagement in getting those key performers on board to encourage that team. That you talk about the word passion, and if they can see that everybody is engaged and communicating, then they're the two probably the most important skills that you.
Great. Is there anything I should have covered that I haven't?
No, I think you've collectively put a whole raft of intel out there. It's absolutely brilliant. No, I think you've literally covered it. I came in with some points, but you've actually, you've nailed those, which is brilliant.
Good, great. Well, thank you so much for joining. And it's I've found it incredibly helpful having fractional expert HR advice in the businesses. So yeah, I'm sure people will reach out on the back of it.
Thanks for having me, James.